Okay, by my watch, it's 4 o'clock, so we're going to get started right on time. Can you turn the mic up? Better? Okay. It sounds like I'm yelling from up here. I'm Ken Litke. I have the distinct honor this year of serving as the president of the Homeowners Association of Tellico Village. And I'd like to welcome all of you. We have a good turnout tonight, this afternoon, to our first general meeting of the year. So thank you all for coming. We have a great meeting planned, but before we get into it, I got a few housekeeping things I'd like to cover. Today's meeting is being recorded, as we always do, and live streamed as well by the church here. So if you don't want to take notes, you can always go back later on and go online and see it again. And the people at home, welcome to you as well. Okay, some of you may be new in this particular building, newcomers to the village. So this year, the HOA has decided at all general meetings and our socials to point out, to make sure that everyone's aware of the exits. So just take a moment to look around. We don't anticipate any problems, but just to be sure, there's exits clearly marked in this building. Okay, this is the agenda for today. We're going to have an invocation in a minute. Then I'm going to do an HOA update along with Linda Klein sitting behind me. Then we'll do a state of the village from the POA. And then the long-range planning will do some highlights of what they're doing. And the different sections, we will have an opportunity for you to ask questions. And then at the end of the meeting, something new this year, we're going to go out in the back and have some refreshments, light refreshments, and be able to continue to follow up with your discussions, your questions, and then meet with your HOA board and any POA board members that are there as well. Before I do the invocation, I'd like to recognize a special attendee, Henry Cullen, I know is in the audience back here somewhere. Henry? Thank you. Now, the invocation. It's been in our history that every general meeting we start with an invocation. And this year, all the pastors here happen to be gone. So even though it's not in my job description, I'm going to fill in for them. So if you would please bow your head. Dear wise and loving Father, let me say thank you on behalf of all of you who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings that we enjoy. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health, for sustenance and for friendship, for all the beauty that surrounds us. Please bless and provide guidance to all the leaders and planners and all that work in this community. In your most blessed name I pray, amen. Thank you. Okay, joining me on the stage for this section on the HOA update will be Linda Klein, as I mentioned earlier. But I'm going to start out by recapping the 2019 accomplishments, and then we will get into the 2020 goals. So our accomplishments. Much was accomplished during 2019, which I'll briefly present in the next few slides. Thanks much to the outgoing 2019 board for all they did. Some of the things we did, we significantly reduced the volunteer hours required for HOA administration. We're all volunteers here, and the more efficient we can make it, the better for all of us. We created 2 new board positions, and I'll talk about that more later on, a vice president of advocacy and a vice president of event planning. We celebrated our 30th anniversary. We had a big presentation here, which I had the honor of leading that presentation. And we had a luau, which I think the people that attended had a good time. We offered 105 different social events. I would like to see if anyone attended all 105. I doubt that happened. And we formed many, many small groups, which are listed on the screen. Okay, continuing on our accomplishments. We worked jointly with the POA to develop an award, the Tellico Village Humanitarian Award. And that was awarded to some first responders who actually saved a life. It was very special. We shared information on the utility smart meter project rollout, and we provided a platform, the long-range planning vision, to be communicated, as we are doing today in this meeting later on. We continued as an active member of the Lenore City Committee of 100. We refocused our neighborhood watch to home security, not just reporting, but also protecting. Our Highway Safety Committee worked very closely with State Representative Lowell Russell for continued advocacy for Tellico Village. And I'm sure the improvements on Route 44 are evident to all. Our welcome orientation for new residents was offered 6 times this past year. We conducted surveys on homeowner preferences and experiences. How do you want to receive your communications? And as a result of that, we eliminated our newsletter, which provided it was outdated news. So we've gone to a new method of communicating, our emails, which are called the Voice, the HOA Voice. And I'm sure you've been receiving those. Much more timely. With regard to Tellico Life, the vision continues on. One place, one website, and one calendar to find out what's happening in Tellico Village. This was launched in 2017. We have 47 clubs participating, with more on the way. The Long Range Planning Advisory Committee uses it to communicate their 2019 report and answer questions from villagers. And now I'll bring Linda up.
Our financial summaries for 2019. Our membership dues, $17,882. Social activities, $153,556.47. Tellico Life, $7,207, with a total income of $178,645.47. Our expenses for 2019, administration, $14,005.76. Communications, $2,088.34. Social activities, $145,261.13. Tellico Life, $7,252.19. Total expenses, $168,607.42. Our year to net income was $10,038.05. I'd just like to let you know that some of your membership dues, what it actually sort of pays for. And it's meeting forms like we have today. And professional services, insurance, communications in all forms, like banners, website, printing, and this is to give our HOA members a lot of information. And as you can see, social activities in Tellico Life break even. It just rolls over, but it really breaks even in the end. And if you have any questions, you can always come to me. Thank you.
Okay, now onward to 2020. Here is your current 2020 board, which we elected last year. Interest of time, I'm not going to mention every name. I'm going to call out a few special positions and names. First, I'd like to mention Ellen Fox, our past president, and I wish I could say hi to her here, but this is what past presidents do. They go on vacation. So I just want to thank her for all the work she did last year and also mentoring me this year. Responsibility for today's programs, our Vice President of Programs, Dennis Doherty, is sitting way in the back. We have a new position, which I mentioned accomplishments last year. We have a Vice President of Advocacy, Mark Pantley, who's sitting out in the audience over here. And we did split the positions on the events into Vice President of Event Planning and a Vice President of Social Planning. The job was just too big. We have 2 people in that position, Jack McElligott and Steve Turkwitz. Both are doing a wonderful job. Okay, music for the budget. I love that. Okay. So the 2020 budget, as you see right here, as Linda said, social activities are somewhat of a break even. The money we take in is what we spend on the activities for that. Your dues go to many things, supporting our programs, such as this meeting here, and supporting our advocacy efforts. So even if you don't go to a social, your dues are helping support the HOA do important work on advocacy, okay? Let's turn to goals now, strategic goals. And these goals support our mantra, which you've heard many times: be engaged, be informed, and be heard. We're going to do this through implementing advocacy strategies, identifying and prioritizing issues that have impact on our HOA members. We're going to keep our members informed, and as I said, we're finding various new methods to update our members, communications methods. Improve efficiencies of HOA roles that continue from last year, reducing non-essential activities and making it easier for our volunteers. And we're going to promote the implementation of community management business best practices. Now, these goals are somewhat broad in nature, but they are supported by detailed objectives. And these detailed objectives can be found on our HOA website. So if you're interested, please go to our site and check them out. But these goals could be somewhat summarized here by focusing on advocacy for key homeowner issues, improve communications, continuing to promote a sense of community through a wide selection of social activities, and increase our membership by delivering additional value to the HOA membership. And this is in the form of advocacy. Now, with regard to advocacy, we are still somewhat defining this, but right now we are developing goals, advocacy issue selection criteria, and an advocacy process. We're going to implement the appropriate communication strategies to get the word out to our members. We're going to add the capability in Teleco Life for HOA to take questions and provide feedback, much like we did for the Long Range Planning Advisory Committee. We're going to achieve HOA board approval for any of these activities, any of these advocacy activities, and we're hoping to do at least 3 during this year. Now, our first project is already underway, and it is seeking a water pressure improvement through management of irrigation watering times. Long title. This came out of a Public Services PSAC meeting in September, and there was a need to educate residents and irrigation companies on the importance of watering times. So we formed an ad hoc committee, and we're fact-finding right now. We're working with PSAC, members of that committee, with the POA and others, looking to roll out, likely before spring, before the irrigation season starts, and likely make a presentation at our March general meeting. So with that said, I'm going to turn the podium over to Rick Blau our president of the POA. Here you go.
Thanks, Ken. And I want to thank the HOA for hosting this event. It's always a great event, and it's always very informative. As you now know, I'm Rick Blau, and I'm your 2020 president of the Property Owners Association Board. 2019 was a very exciting year for Teleco Village, during which a lot was accomplished. In a moment, Winston Blazer, the POA's chief executive, and Parker Owen, its chief financial officer, are going to tell you about that. First, I'd like to introduce the board's 2020 officers. Here we go. As I said, I'm president. Vice president is Carla Johnson. Carla. Our secretary is Pat White. I saw him before. There he is. And our treasurer is Steve Schneider. Additionally, there are 3 other board members, Marty Inkrot. And Marty, I saw you. There you are. Sue English-Kovar and Bruce Johnson. As many of you know, The board and management of the village are ably assisted by a series of advisory committees in each of our major functional areas. These committees are comprised of village volunteers who commit their time to moving us forward as a community. Each board member is assigned to be a liaison to an advisory committee, bringing board direction to the committee and bringing information back to the board from the committee. For 2020, these are the advisory committee assignments as shown on this slide. I'm not going to actually go through them. You can read them for yourself. And by the way, we're always looking for members for these committees, and there's always 2 to 3 vacancies on each one every year. So I encourage you to participate. I'm sure many of you are aware of recently announced changes to the board meeting structure. If you're not, you need to read the telegram more. Starting on February 1st or 5th, the board will have 2 official board meetings each month. They'll be on the 1st and 3rd Wednesdays of the month. These meetings will be at the Yacht Club at 1:30 p.m. And this was done because there were just too many issues to deal with expeditiously in a single meeting each month, and to enable broader community participation. Board workshops, when they're needed, will be called on an ad hoc basis. Currently, the board is in the process of establishing its 2020 objectives. They'll be finalized and rolled out to the village in February. One of the POA's key initiatives in 2019 was the establishment of a Governmental Affairs Advisory Committee. Their mission involves educating villagers about issues important to the community and energizing people to be involved and vote in local and state level elections. We feel that an informed and active citizenry is vital to our future. For the past 2 years, you've given me the privilege to serve on your board of directors. As a result, I've gotten to participate in many very positive developments. As I said, 2019 was a banner year for the POA. And here to tell us about it is Winston Blazer and Parker Owen. So I yield to Mr. Blazer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me figure this go stick out here. As Rick said, and I want to reemphasize, 2019 was a great year for the POA. It was a fantastic year in many different ways. Financially, it was very good. From the standpoint of amenities, it was great. And from the sense of studies and what we learned and what we verified through these studies, it was also very good in that regard. Now, I was told by Ken and the HOA that I only had so much time. So these highlights that I'm going to go through are not everything. These are the ones that I've sorted it down to is, I guess, the biggest of the big, but there's a lot that took place in 2019. Finances, which I'm just going to briefly mention because Parker's going to cover that in greater detail. But our budget, we beat our budgeted net income by almost $1 million. Operational cash was much improved over 2018. Reserves are much greater than we had anticipated. And no, we didn't sandbag the budget when we put it together in the late fall of 2018. We just had some exceptional things happen through that year that ended up on the positive side. It doesn't always happen that way, but this particular 2019 turned out to be a great year financially. Parker, I know you and I spent many times huddled up in my office sweating about various cash flow and sundry things that could have worked out against us and so forth and so on. And fortunately, with your leadership and Kevin, it turned out very good. I appreciate that. Some projects and enhancements for 2019 I want to mention. The biggest, I guess, is the Tokwa Clubhouse and Kahiti Clubhouse. The Tokwa Clubhouse was demolished and rebuilt. It turned out to be a beautiful building. The structure is based off of in Fairfield Glades is not near as good as the one we've got. I didn't say that, but that's the truth. But it really, really turned out great. Jeff did a great job. You finished 4+ weeks ahead of time on budget. And in many ways, I think for a long, long time, it's going to be a great asset for the Tokwa Golf Course and the whole community. Kahiti Clubhouse, the Kahitians were most excited to get rid of their double wide. and get a very nice permanent structure built in there with more room. Great addition. And I'm glad that we got that done, and I hope that they are satisfied and hope that it provides a lot of additional use and benefit for the Kahiti Golf Course. Now, one thing I want to mention about that is I want to give some credit to our staff. Staff in general, the POA has one of the best staffs in my 27 years here that I've ever seen. Just in general, across the board, we have got a great bunch of people. On those two projects alone, the golf department and the IT department probably saved the POA by doing work in-house somewhere between $125,000 to $150,000 on those two jobs. Jeff knows what I'm talking about, but the IT, the wiring, the audio visual, the computer wiring that it takes to do anything now, you have to have a computer, the irrigation, the landscaping and so forth at those two projects was primarily done by our Golf World. They stepped up and did it, along with all the other jobs they've got to do. So Kevin and my Golf World's not here right now. They're probably taking care of some greens or something, but thank you very much. Great job. Turned out beautiful. Toqua's looking great. Dehumidifier at the Wellness Center. When Simon came on board, he identified some issues that we had with that building and the dehumidification because of the indoor pool. We wrestled that to the ground last year. We installed a new dehumidifier. It's better designed to match the use of our pool, the size of our pool, temperature, and the amounted square footage in that room. So we think we have that under control. The roof is being replaced right now with a new metal roof that will probably last at least 50 years. So in that regards, to that amenity, great improvement, great enhancement, because I think the metal roof not only will last longer, I think it'll look nicer. Another area that we had a great year was studies. We did a lot of studying, a lot of taking evaluations of our systems and our resources and better looking at what we had and how we apply them and so forth. I'm not keeping up, am I, Rick? Okay. Sure. We did a road study. We hired an outside engineering firm to come in and evaluate every mile of road that we've got. They came in, they used a scale, they used a measuring metrics. That was the first time that we've had our roads evaluated. We always knew we had pretty good roads, but we wanted to officially confirm what we got, and then it helped us plan for the future on out. And we learned that we are, adequately financed and have budgeted for the future road maintenance and so forth. The road system, Jeff and I have always known, compared to the roads that we drive on outside the village in Loudoun County, that we are far superior in that regard, but it's always been a big thing for the property owners, the road conditions and so forth. Jeff's done a good job of spoiling them not only on the roads themselves, but when it snows around here, we can still get around very well. In the 1993 blizzard, you could go anywhere in the village. You couldn't go outside the village, but you could go anywhere in the village. So you could drive around in circles, but you couldn't go to town. Jeff, I think, sometimes a little fanatical in that area. We did a sewer system study. This study showed that our system is capable of handling us to build out. We kind of had a good sense of that. We wanted to verify that. Now, the one thing that we will have to do, and we've always known this, is as we grow, our lift stations, our substations, will have to be expanded with larger pumps, upgrade, so to speak. And the way Jeff has compared that or tried to relate that to me in non-engineering terms is if you can use a 110 outlet and don't have to pay for 220, don't do it until you have to. So our systems are good in the sewer department, and we will have to upgrade as growth dictates. Water system study. Jacobs Engineering did a water system and verified what we've known. For those that have worked here at the POA, we've known for a long time that we were going to have a northern water tank. We've deferred that water tank for many, many years because of the fact that instead of TAS being our only water supplier, we used LUB. We went into a contract with them in the early 2000s. They connected onto our water system in 4 different locations and supplied water to the mid and northern parts of the village and deferred a $1 million I think initially it was back then $750,000 water tank, but we've probably deferred that maybe 10 or more years. Deference of cash and expenditures is a good thing from where I sit. But now we've reached a point in the growth in our village, 4,000 plus homes, that we've got to go into that and build in the northern end a water tank for the volume and for the pressure purposes. But in the master plan of the village, that's always been there. In the financial realm, we did a look at our reserves, a study of our reserves as far as our timing and our adequacy for the years going out. We have increased that look 5 more years. So now when we do a budget, we do the next year a budget, and then we do 5 more years, and then last year we did 5 more on top of that. So now we have a longer look out into the financial future. It gives us a better feel. And all these studies that we worked on, road studies, sewer studies, water studies, they paid dividends, and not only did we learn about the engineering, the system, and the structure, but they also provided us financial data, which has proven that we are in pretty good financial shape for the long term. So we're good at that, and we've reaped a lot of benefit from these studies. So overall, in 2019, I think it was no surprise to Jeff, and it was no surprise to his Public Works team, but our infrastructure, our systems in place are in pretty good shape. A lot of credit goes to his staff and crew for keeping that in that condition. We also had a REC strategic plan performed in 2019. Simon and his REC committee did a 5-year strategic plan. It kind of guides them. Simon is a real mover and shaker in the REC world, and he wanted to turn it up a notch, if you will, in the REC world and wellness world, and I think he's done that. We've got trails now. We didn't have that before, Simon. We've got paddleboard for those that are adventurous enough to get on a board and stand up in the water. We've got a lot of new programs, and this strategic program is the study that he did is going to be a big help to us in guiding him in that direction. He also created the Timeless Teleco Foundation. He and his board on that see this as a way to alternate funding for POA amenities and programs, which is always a big welcome plus for us anytime we can get additional funding to help the total cause. One thing about Simon I want to mention that probably a few of you know about is Simon was past president in 2019 of the Tennessee Professional Recreation Association. This is rec professionals across the state, had a body of about 1,600 people. So Simon, when he gets up and he talks about rec, he's not just hot air. He really knows what's going on, and he's really been a breath of fresh air in that area, that department for me. Some other highlights that are very important I want to mention: marketing. I know that there's always this constant debate about why do we market and so forth and so on. But one thing I want to comment on is to date, through 2019, 290 idle, non-assessment producing lots have been sold. 290. Before we had a marketing program, we maybe sold 2 or 3, and that was giving them away. 290 lots represents to me and Parker approximately $1.5 million a year in additional revenue that was producing none. In the county, it is also lots that were not producing, and they were having to be taken away through legal action and tax sales, producing tax money. So now I went back and I calculated all the lots from the start of our marketing program through 2019 and determined, using kind of a half-year convention for lots sold in that year, $495,000 has been recouped in this program. And from going forward, 2020, I estimate $550,000 in assessment only. This is not any of the other marketing revenues. So from the standpoint of doing a budget and looking at assessments, we have all these lots that were sitting over here that were a collection issue are now productive and revenue generating. These also, we estimate, will create 2/3 of those lots have already got houses on them or being built on them. So that generates additional amenity use and so forth and so on. Just a highlight I thought I'd mention tonight. Wanted to mention working with Representative Lowell Russell. Lowell Russell's first year for representing his district was 2019. He got us a legislative, a law, and that law allows us to exempt $25,000 of sales tax for public works and safety equipment. That's significant from the standpoint, $25,000 of taxation is probably about $380,000 of expenditure to get tax-free. And it also significant from the standpoint that the state legislature is recognizing this entity as quite significant and worthy of their attention and some effort. So I applaud Lowell for helping us in that area. And as a freshman representative, that kind of accomplishment was just inconceivable years before. Also, want to mention the water system. We've got a water tank that's going to go in. CCI is going to donate or give to the POA the land that sits on. That was not done for the first water tank. So I want to applaud CCI for having the forethought and generosity for that donation. That's going to work nice for us in that regard. ACC did a major rewrite of the Blue Book, making that document more property owner friendly. Since I've been here, I would venture to guess that the ACC Blue Book has been rewritten, edited, modified, changed at least 15 times. And every time we get through with it, somebody has a problem with it or they find a better way. So this will not be the end, but they did a very good job on getting it where it is now today, and we feel like it's much more user-friendly. Also, CI savings, continuous improvement. Last year, the employees of the company, through efforts of doing things smarter, new systems, new products, so forth and so on, gave back to the company $165,000. That $165,000 will be converted or sent or put in the R&M this year. That's going to make a total over 8 years of $1.2 million that's been given back through continuous improvement. So Mitzi, congratulations on your efforts there. Appreciate that. I know the company appreciates that. Mostly Parker appreciates that when it comes to balanced budgets. Now, last thing I want to finish up with, and I want to reiterate, 2019 was a great year. I can't cover everything because I know Ken's probably got a laser in the back of my head right now. But anyway, there's a lot of other things, and I could probably speak for an hour on all the accomplishments that the board and the staff put together to make 2019 a great year. And I do want to thank my board for that because it's with their strategic leadership and their support that these things get happen. The last thing I want to talk about is the golf transition. As everyone's aware, Jim West resigned in December 2019. I want to thank Jim for the many years of service he gave to Tellico Village in the golf world. He's got us on a great foundation. Our golf platform is very healthy. It's very solid. Got a great programs and staff. But Jim's gone. He's taken a job with the PGA. He's going to be traveling the country, working for the PGA. Probably someday we'll see him as the chief executive of the PGA organization. I expect no less from him. Anyway, back here at Tellico Village, Mitzi and I have been meeting with the golf staff. We've met with them 4 times. We have met with all the key golf staff individually. We have talked about our resources, where we are, what we've got, what we'd like to see done, and we've heard a lot. It's been a two-way conversation between Mitzi and I and them. Been very informative. In tomorrow's telegram, and you know, I'm not. This is not a hold you in suspense, but in tomorrow's telegram, we're going to have an article on that, and the new structure is going to be laid out as far as the head of the golf program. The reason I'm not going to tell you all tonight is because, quite frankly, I have to talk to all the employees and inform them personally. I don't want them to hear about this via a meeting. No disrespect, but I have the utmost respect for my employees, and that's the way I'm going to do it. But in tomorrow's telegram, Beth, you're welcome for the plug. Tomorrow's telegram will be the new structure coming out. But some things that I can cover is the program is in good shape. The golf is there if you want to play. Rain never bothered a true golfer, so get out there and play. We're going to continue to grow that program. We started a lot of stuff new year. We're going to continue to grow it this year. We're going to grow it even more rapid, more programs in 2020. Merchandise will be handled a little different. We're going to retain the ownership of the merchandise in-house. And before, with Jim West, Jim owned the merchandise, and the merchandise sales and expense went to him, and it was his kind of sub-business along with being director of golf. We're going to retain that in-house, and it'll be POA owned, POA financed, and there will be incentives to the golf world to make sure we have what you all want, when you want it, at a good fair price, and it's, I think it'd be a great improvement all the way around. Gift certificates. This has been a very contentious discussion amongst the board members. I clearly had a camp in this side that said, you know, do it this way, and a camp over here that asked for a little bit more consideration. The gift certificate situation is complicated, and we're going to do our best to try to summarize this in the telegram tomorrow, but the deal is there is a lot of expired gift certificates out there that the golf world, about $7,500 worth of gift certificates that have expired. We, the POA golf world, we're going to honor those at 50 cents on the dollar, even though they are expired. And then we will do that through April 30th, 2020. After that, expired is expired. All gift certificates issued from this point forward, in 2020 forward, the expiration date will be the expiration date. And it was something that I learned during this transition, that we were still taking those and we were accepting those. And I'm sure it had a good reason, and it was a goodwill effort and a PR effort and so forth. But for the accounting standpoint, the management standpoint, and for the business standpoint of the merchandise and bringing it in-house, we have to go with a little bit more stringent operation with regulations. Expirations will be expirations. So anyway, with that, that's my highlights for 2019. I want to reiterate one thing. It was a great year for the POA, from my chair, from the board's chair. We had a great, in just about every sense. And thank you all.
It's a great day to be the CFO of Tellico Village, because I get the privilege of reviewing the 2019 finances. And as Winston hinted, 2019 was a very good year by just about any measure. Our revenue for 2019 was $21.3 million. That's up from approximately $20 million in 2018, so a $1.3 million growth in revenue. Expenses came in at $20 million, so subtracting expenses from revenues, we generated $1.3 million of net income, and that was approximately $1 million better than budget. Now, Winston pointed out we really didn't sandbag the budget. We had quite a few things that went on the favorable side, and I always enjoy seeing that happen. I tend to be pretty conservative in budgeting. I like to see it before I believe it. And in 2019, we did indeed see good results. There were a number of components that added up to that $1 million better than budget figure. We did our HA5 pavement preservation program, came in about $150,000 favorable to budget. There were some timing issues there. We did pull some of the streets, primarily the Chattooga area, that are being deferred to 2020. But all in, we came in $150,000 below budget. Salaries and benefits, $388,000 favorable to budget. Now, we had some unfilled positions that either didn't get filled at all or got filled later in the year than had been budgeted. We also had some significant favorable variances on benefits. That was due to a couple of things. Benefits elections. We tend to budget conservatively because we don't know for sure at the time the budget is developed and approved We don't know for sure what elections employees are going to make regarding their benefits. And that can range anywhere from full family coverage down to a waiver of benefits, medical benefits I'm talking about, if they have coverage through a spouse's benefits plan. So we did have some favorability on benefits elections, and we also stayed healthy. Employees didn't use their medical benefits as much as we had budgeted, so we actually stayed healthier, and good news all the way around. Healthy employees don't need to go to the doctor as much, so that was very good and very favorable. Depreciation, that came in $156,000 better than budget or lower than budget. That was primarily a timing issue. Much of our capital plan got executed and completed and capitalized later in the year than we had budgeted. So depreciation is $156 lower than budget. The portico donation that was made by the Kahidi residents to get the portico built at the Kahidi Community Center, that was booked in 2019 as a donation, $148,000, and that did go to the bottom line. No surprise, no secret that Tellico Village is growing and growing more rapidly than we've seen in many years. With that came a higher volume of property transfers. Property transfers come at a price, and that price then translates into net income for the POA. And growth also has an impact on tank installations. As houses get built, tanks get installed, and revenues and net income follows. So property transfers accounted for $75,000 better than budget, and tank installations $44,000 better than budget. Probably the most exciting thing of 2019 was the capital program. The biggest capital program, most aggressive capital program since construction of the Wellness Center. And that was, 12, 13 years ago, I think. Leading the list of capital projects was the Tokwa Golf Clubhouse. Came in at $2.38 million. That's not everything has been settled on that. We've still got one remaining draw from the contractor, which actually is in that number. But still a few nickels and dimes floating around there, but it's going to come in right at budget, $23,000 under at the moment. The Kahidi Community Center came in at $701,000. That project is closed out at $80,000 under budget. The dehumidifier that Winston mentioned earlier regarding the Wellness Center, $281,000, essentially on the money. It was $4,000 over budget. And everything else, there were 21 other capital projects executed in 2019. Do a little quick arithmetic, that averages about $29,000 each, although admittedly there's a range there. But they totaled $608,000 and $16,000 under budget. So all in, the capital plan came just shy of $4.7 million. And I mean, we're right on the money. It's the best that I could have asked for. Didn't come by accident. Jeff Gagley and I talk daily, at least every working day and some weekends actually, on riding herd over and managing carefully the 2019 capital plan. So kudos to Jeff. You have my sincere thanks for making that happen. Now the Wellness Center roof was it was budgeted for 2019 at about $300,000 for an asphalt roof. And that probably sounded okay at the time, but along the way, I think it was in June, some high winds took part of the shingles off of the Wellness Center roof, and that sped up the sense of urgency for getting the roof replaced. After considerable deliberation, staff recommended and the board approved construction of a metal roof, which has a much longer life than asphalt shingles. That metal roof will be here for decades to come. But it comes at a price. So the metal roof cost $300,000 more than we had budgeted for 2019. We had expected, even at that, to finish that project within the year. Weather got in the way, various delays of one sort or another, so that project spilled over into 2020. We recognized that and have budgeted $305,000 to complete the roof in 2020. And that probably will be around the March timeframe, Jeff. Am I remembering that about right? Okay. So that was the highlights of the capital plan. To be able to execute that aggressive a plan all within the same year, 2 clubhouse projects, for goodness sakes, and come in as close to budget as we did, I think that's extraordinary. With strong positive net income, that translates into cash. And our operating cash starting the year 2020, ending the year 2019, is up $1 million over 2018's year end and 2019's year beginning operating cash balance. So, here's a little accounting lesson for you. If net income is $1 million over budget, your operating cash probably is going to be $1 million higher than expected. So that's all the accounting you get for today. Now, by plan, we had planned and indeed did draw down the amenity reserve fund, almost $1.5 million. But there was method to our madness, of course. We had planned for several years and built up the amenity reserve fund to the levels that it would take to execute the Caheta Community Center and about half of the Tokwa Golf Clubhouse. So you put money in a savings account, save it for particular use. When that use comes along, you spend it. And we did indeed spend most of the amenity reserve fund. I think it stands today at about $100,000. The R&M reserve is down about $300,000, $306,000. That was in large part due to the Wellness Center dehumidifier and the roof. So there were a lot of other pluses and minuses in and out of R&M, but we start the year down about $300,000. Water and sewer reserve, on a brighter note, though, is up $313,000, just in time to build a $1 million water tank. I'll talk about that more in just a few minutes. But water and sewer reserve is up $313,000. I think it stands at about $1.3 million right now. And everything else, which includes the TRDA reserve, safety reserve, docks, and completion assurance fee reserves, those are up about $83,000 combined. So you add up all the pluses and minuses, our total cash at the beginning of the year, $4,374,000. That's down about $354,000, but remember, we spent a lot of that amenity reserve fund to build the clubhouses. So, there's a direct connection between those two, and I think we're starting the year in excellent shape from a cash standpoint and a financial standpoint. Let's talk about debt. And the way I look at it, the good news keeps on coming. We had planned for $1.2 million as a construction line of credit to help build the Tokwa Golf Clubhouse. We drew $1,158,000 against that line of credit. I've got a little dry powder left on that credit line for the odds and ends that may come in over the next couple of months, but pretty much drew against that line of credit as planned. So you add, I'm going to round and call that $1.2 million of new debt, but we didn't forget about the obligations that we already had on the books. We paid down $325,000 as payments to principal on our long-term debt. That's primarily the Wellness Center note, the Welcome Center note, and the medical office building. We also paid down $131,000 as payments to principal on the TRDA capital lease. So put those two together, net, we increased about $700,000 in long-term debt. But considering what we got for our money, I think that's a pretty good bargain. I see that Winston used up some of my time, so I'm getting the warning sign from my friend on the front row here.
You ought to see the people that are armed behind you.
Okay, looking ahead just a little bit, and this is the slide you've all been waiting for, my last slide. The 2020 budget and 10-year plan that Winston referenced earlier begins rebuilding our reserves. 2019 was a big year. It was not sustainable, however. You have to catch your breath, rebuild your cash balances, your reserves, and lay away some money for future major maintenance and other capital plans. With that, the board concluded, staff had recommended, and the board agreed that for 2020 we needed the full 5% assessment increase. So you all got notice of that back in December, effective with your January payments. The capital plan for 2020 is $2.8 million. Still a pretty aggressive plan, and more than I would consider to be the average for a year. Adding to that, or included in that $2.8 million, is a $1 million water tank to help alleviate water pressure on the north end of the village. That tank to be located in the Coyote Hills area. Somewhat late in the year, we learned of the need to replace the wave attenuator at the Yacht Club Basin. I didn't even know what a wave attenuator was a few months ago, but it's $220,000. Actually, that helps break the wave action coming in toward the Yacht Club and the docks to keep the boats from bouncing around and damaging both the boats and the docks. And as usual, we have our typical equipment replacements, $1.4 million in 2020. And a highlight of this year, I don't know a date yet, but you can roughly mark it on your calendars. In August of this year, we will pay off the note to the Wellness Center. And no doubt we will have a note-burning party of some sort on the steps of the Wellness Center, I promise you. So, in summary, it's been a very good year for Tellico Village POA. With strong operating cash balances, we're off to a good start in 2020, and it's been my privilege to be a part of this. Thank you so much.
The long-range strategic plan highlights.
Good evening and welcome to our overview of the 2019 Tellico Village Long Range Strategic Plan. First of all, I'd like to thank Ken as well as Dennis and the whole HOA board for allowing us to speak with you today. As you've heard, my name is Wayne Enderle, and I currently serve as the chair of the Long Range Planning Advisory Committee. The new Long Range Strategic Plan attempts to identify the needs of the village in the next 6 to 20 year time frame. While there is a tremendous amount of detail in the plan, today I'll give you a very brief and short overview because I understand that I'm the only person between you and the adult beverage of your choice. Oop, too fast. We use data, metrics, surveys, focus groups, and benchmarking in our analysis. We strive to be impartial as we developed this plan and went where the facts took us. We partnered with the HOA and New Villagers to capture the voice of property owners and to gain their support, culminating in the unanimous acceptance of the plan by the board last October. We are communicating the plan through as many means as possible, including the telegram and meetings like this. The full plan, the plan presentation, and questions and answers can be found on Teleco Life, and the details are in the handouts you received when you came to the meeting today. If you're going to build a new strategic plan, you need to think about where you're heading. And what that meant was we had to look at the vision that we had for Teleco Village. 2 focus groups reviewed our prior vision and found it wanting. A new vision was developed, and this is it: to be a dynamic, engaging community, meeting the changing needs of the property owners in a fiscally responsible manner, resulting in a lifetime of well-being. And the board approved this vision for the village back in November. Now on to key findings and recommendations. Teleco Village is transitioning Teleco Village is transitioning from a build and enhance to a maintain and sustain phase. Build out will occur sometime between 2030 and 2035. As a result, our revenues will plateau. We will reach the design capacity of our water and sewer systems, as Winston mentioned, in the 2026-2028 timeframe, requiring debottlenecking and other projects to enhance those capacities. Our palette of amenities was benchmarked as best in class, so we are not recommending any new major amenities at this time. In general, our amenities are adequately sized. The one exception, there's docks, which we need sometime this year or next. Apart from a few large meetings and events, we have sufficient meeting room capacity. But what we have is a challenge in allocating and scheduling efficiently the resources we do have. There are other possible exceptions that require better data to support good decision-making in the future. These are the near-term recommendations aligned with key focus areas. We are recommending that the board focus on these issues first. In the area of financial integrity, we are recommending that we document our capital and budget approval processes and that we conduct a POA operational excellence review. To maintain the appeal of the village, we are recommending Tenacity boat slips, an aesthetics and environment advisory committee, meeting room reservation systems, virtual meeting capability, and community center feasibility study. And finally, some other near-term recommendations to help enable the plan include a Plan Act check review process, a POA department long-range plan development process, establishing a balanced scorecard to support the vision of the village, recreation data automation, ongoing data collection, a Teleco Village census, and developing a mission statement that supports our new vision. Beyond the near-term recommendations are a series of longer-term recommendations that the board will need to focus on in the future. In the area of maintaining and sustaining the village, these include road surfacing, sewer and water upgrades, and reserves for the Tenacity and Kahiti Greens. To maintain the appeal of the village, our longer-term recommendations include a Tenacity kitchen expansion, a new Teleco Village broadcasting facility, information technology infrastructure, off-site shuttle and parking system, and off-site boat storage. And finally, there's a number of possible recommendations that require further study to determine the need, feasibility, and timing of these activities. Wellness center and pickleball expansion, high density and patio housing, Chota Center renovation or replacement, Kahiti kitchen expansion, facility parking plans, firehouse expansion, the Tenacity clubhouse renovation or replacement, and lakefront casual dining. To keep this plan alive, we are proposing 3 individual regularly scheduled engagements as part of our Plan, Act, Check review cycle. A semi-annual review and reporting on the long-range strategic plan and metrics. A joint planning committee and board annual planning and review workshop, and then a biennial long-range strategic plan review and update with the planning committee, the board, and the POA departments. The key here is to make sure that this plan remains a living, breathing document, updated based upon new data, future needs, resource responses to those needs, and the desires of Tellico Village property owners. This is not a one and done plan. Given our limited time today, this has been a very high-level overview of the plan. I encourage you to read the full plan and the plan presentations found on Tellico Life, and you can find the details of how to do that in your handouts. We do, though, have some time today to take your questions on the plan, and to accomplish that, I'd like to ask some of my fellow long-range planning committee members to come up and take the stage, and I'm going to ask Carla to come up and facilitate our Q&A session. The members of the committee that are coming up are Bart Margocius, Rich Anda, Barry Sherman, and Ed Grolleman.
Thank you, Wayne, for that excellent presentation. And so now we do have time for some questions and answers. However, due to some limitations on that time, we do ask that you adhere to a couple of guidelines. One, if someone else asks the same or a very similar question to the one you have, please refrain from repeating the question. If you would like clarification, we'll remind you how to ask and receive answers to your questions from the committee online. 2, if you have a question, please raise your hand and wait for someone with a microphone. Guys with a microphone, wave your hands out there in the middle, to come to you so that everyone may hear your question and the response. And number 3, please limit to 1 question and 1 follow-up question per person. Okay? So, all right, who has the first question? We have one right over here in the front. Oh, and one right down in the middle.
Good evening. My name is Marilyn Moretti. I'm an 8-year member of the HOA and represent about 200 water members who are also members of the HOA. Tellico Lake has become a centerpiece for economic growth in our 3-county area. Our lake is rapidly becoming urbanized due to residential growth and with lesser amounts of agriculture and open space every year. In 2020, the Watershed Association of the Tellico Reservoir, or WATER, is focused on new and sometimes negative impacts of residential communities, Tellico Village being the largest, on the water quality of the lake. Stormwater management is a critical concern. As wooded areas are cleared and new homes built, land to absorb water decreases and the volume of runoff increases, causing soil erosion and carrying a variety of pollutants which will damage lake water. Asian carp are a major threat because they will be a 30-pound dominant species in the lake and will be a physical hazard to boaters, swimmers, fishermen, and other lake users. Water endorses the formation of an Aesthetics and Environment Advisory Committee reporting directly to the board because of these very important issues which cannot longer be ignored. The long-range planning survey showed that A&E issues were second in importance to Tellico Village residents. Water stands ready to support and partner with the POA, the HOA, and other groups within Tellico Village and throughout the watershed. What are the next steps before an A&E committee becomes a reality?
Can you hear me? Yep. Okay, good. First of all, thank you for that question. You know, our Shaping for the Future questionnaire identified that aesthetics and environments was the number 2 issue that was brought up in that questionnaire. If you remember, the questionnaire got responses from about 40% of the households in Tellico Village, which was a tremendous victory. But we agree strongly that maintaining and protecting our village's aesthetics and environment is critically important for not only our long-range success as a village, but also for our property values. So this is not a small issue. Before the Aesthetics and Environmental Subcommittee or committee is formed, there needs to be some steps taken. The Board of Directors accepted our long-range strategic plan recommendations in its entirety. The next step, however, is for the board to formally approve the individual recommendations that reside in the long-range strategic plan. And the approval for an Aesthetics and Environmental Committee has to be voted upon. Then there are some details that have to be resolved. And one of those is the A&E committee going to be a standing committee, and also to whom, or an ad hoc committee, and to whom will they be reporting to? So that detail has to be decided. Once those things are in place, I think it's fair to say that recruitment for individuals who want to participate in the A&E committee will be solicited. We have a close relationship with Water, with the Garden Club, and we encourage any other clubs or organizations that have an interest in this to volunteer. Thank you.
Okay, we have another question down here.
My name is Jan Sampson. My question pertains to a performing arts auditorium large meeting facility, which is listed in the 2025-29 area of the long-range report, I think. I'm interested in when a needs assessment could be started, as I am under the impression that it has been approved by the board. As this has been started under several different boards and has also been in the original plans for Tellico Village, the topic seems to keep coming up. I'm very interested and hopeful that we could start a needs assessment right away, as the cost of something like that seems like it probably would be nominal.
As you're all aware, we're a growing community, and one of the big questions is where can we meet when we're in situations that we have more than 250 people? So one of our recommendations has been based upon the feedback that we got from our questionnaire, and we asked people if they felt there was a need for a multi-purpose large meeting space. And guess what we got? We got 40% of our people said yes, 40% said no, and 20% said they weren't sure. So didn't really give us any direction, but as a committee, we got together and have provided a recommendation to the board that there be a feasibility study at an initial level, just to determine what are the options, what would the scope be, what might the initial cost be, what would the usage be, and this is a recommendation we made that hopefully will be initiated within 2020. We're also making recommendations that the Loudoun County be looked at in terms of an opportunity to combine resources and funds, not only with Tellico Village, but with a county facility that could be used, based on the fact that we don't need a large facility over 250 that many times during the year, but when we do, we really want to have that. So to give you a specific answer on timing, we're really recommending that the board will develop a feasibility subcommittee to develop that. Thank you for your question.
Okay, any other questions? One way back in the back.
Hi, my name's Peter Brown, and I'm new to Telco Village. I mean, I'm still wet behind the ears. I mean, I don't even have grass on my lawn yet. But my question is related to the Tanasi. I came in late, so I'm not sure if it was covered. But Tanasi, there was a comment about expansion and boat slips. In my new view of the Tanasi area, it seems like the big challenge there is parking. Are you going to discuss parking? Is that part of the plan?
The answer is yes. Clearly, that's a key issue. We need docks. There's no doubt about it. The question will be exactly when, and it's sooner rather than later. But a key issue is parking, and how do we address that parking? And the way we specifically listed in the plan from a recommendation viewpoint was we need to put in new docks, and they probably need to be at Tanasi, but also in conjunction with that, we need to put some kind of off-site parking, because the issue is the parking there at the docks, you're bounded by houses on one end, a cemetery on another end, the water on one side, and then other homes and roadways bounded on the other side. And it really limits your options. So the idea is that potentially try to put in some off-site parking and then shuttle people to their boats. Now, one of the key things we did look at is that, how often would we need this? And it's primarily the big holidays where people are out on their boats, 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day. Those are big boating days. And so that would be the time probably that we would have to put this process in place. But clearly at this point, we don't have enough slips for the demand. Now, one thing that just a sidelight, I'm also a part of TBART, and TBART takes boat donations. And what has been happening as the boat lease prices have gone up, the number of people calling TBART and wanting to donate their boat has gone up, which has kind of been a good thing for TBART, but it's also been a good thing for opening up slips, which is why that we've got a time frame of when this may be able to happen. Thanks for your question.
All right, we have another question up here toward the front. And, okay, one back here in the middle. Go ahead.
My name is Shauna Hunt. I have what I think is a pretty simple question, but I was wondering why under the recommendations for longer term, we have the Kahidi kitchen expansion. And I was just kind of curious why that wasn't done when the recent Kahidi facility was built. Has to be a good reason for that, I would guess. Thank you.
Thank you. I can answer that. Basically, the Kahidi kitchen has been going, expansion was not included in the community center. That was a totally separate building and facility. One of the things we want to make sure that there's enough data and usage. Previous years, the Kahidi kitchen was not performing very well. Over the last 2 years, based on Kahidi residents, it's gone up significantly. Last year, they had a 33% increase in revenue in the kitchen. So we're seeing that, and based on our data and our information, that's what we're based on. We need to see the real need and real numbers for that before we're going to make a recommendation on that. So we're waiting to see, as these numbers, if this trend continues, and we should do a study on that, on when and what needs to be done to expand the kitchen at Kahidi. Thank you for your question.
Okay, we have another one right up here in the front.
My name is Patty Mao, and when you're talking about the boat slips, it reminds me of, I think it was in 18 when there were the Lake Days vendors by the yacht club. There was a boat club representative there, and I talked to him, and he seemed very interested in having a boat club at Telco Village. And now that we need more and more slips and people are turning in boats, I mean, has this been considered? Have you surveyed whether or not people would be interested in that as an alternative to more slips and that kind of thing?
Hello? Okay, yes. In the survey, there was a question that we put out a couple of years ago about boat sharing, and that was a resounding negative no by people. But what I think we kind of rethink if we would re-enter that question and reapproach it, a boat renting program would be much better.
When I talked to the boat rep, I mean, he was amazed at the price of our boat slips for our property owners. He was paying $250 a month per boat up at Concord. And if he could reduce that, he was talking that maybe if you wanted a pontoon boat during the week, it could be a couple $100 a month that you would pay in, obviously 12 months a year. So I don't mean boat sharing. That's a whole nother matter unless that's what you mean by it. I mean, I don't know much about this area, but it really seemed of interest to me. And when you surveyed it, did you put it on that basis?
Yeah, it wasn't a rental, it was a sharing basis, and we did have several questions on boating and dry docks and things like that overall the community said no to. But one of the things I think we would encourage any third parties that want to come in and want to work any of those scenarios. I think we'd be open to that, and that is one of the things in the dock areas that we're still investigating. Dry dock storage and things like that, and other type of boat sharing and boat rental things. I think in the future, as this plan evolves, I think we'll approach that and look at that in more detail.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Oh, gentleman right up here in the middle and right back there next to you.
Yeah, as a resident, my name is Greg Mitchell. I'm a resident of Coyote Hills. So my question would be exactly where will the location of the new water tower be in Coyote Hills?
They're passing the mic down to you. Hold on a second, Jeff. We're going to get you a microphone. There you go.
Can you hear me? It's going to be up past where they stopped the asphalt. They haven't extended the road up through there yet all the way, so it's going to be up on the hill a little bit more.
Okay,
the highest area back
you're
there.
talking about up Osage Drive?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that new section there?
Yes, sir. They're opening up that new section on up the hill.
Okay, do they have any thoughts about when they're going to start the building?
We're working on the plans right now. We should have it bid out and ready for construction in June or July.
Okay. And is there anywhere we can go to see exactly, I know where it is, because I live on Osage Court, but is there somewhere where we can see the actual plans and the location of where it would be?
Well, we don't have the plans yet. We're developing the plans now. We could show you where the lot's at and where it's going to be laid out on the plat.
Okay.
If you want to stop by the office.
All right. So, is there, where could, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing too well.
Stop by the office, see me or Bud Murray.
Okay, and stop by where?
POA admin.
Okay, up there. Okay, great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, a gentleman right here in the middle had a question, and then we'll go to you, Pat.
Hi, my name is Jim Devers. I had a kind of a follow-up on the Tanasi parking. I know you mentioned something about if you have large use of the waterways that you might do some shuttle buses or whatever, but right now if you have a large group golfing, we're parking all over the grass over there. So is there any thought of taking the grass areas that we're currently parking on and putting some blacktop down or something?
There was a project, first of all, thanks for your question. There was a project where we looked at expanding the parking at Tanasi. And what we found there, and I can't give you the exact numbers because it was a project that Jim West and the Public Works looked at, but on a basis of how much it would cost per parking space, it was just obscenely expensive. And one of the things that we found in looking at the data and looking at the parking, if there's just a golf tournament, only a golf tournament, We usually don't exceed the parking capacity. But what we have found is that we have, and I'll use an example here, a 30-person euchre group scheduled on the same day that MGA or LGA is playing golf for the spare room there at the restaurant. Yeah, we're going to have parking problems. And so some of that is self-inflicted. And part of this room reservation system that we're recommending be implemented is that, for example, you know, you look at the number of cars that are associated with an event. And if, for example, we're having an MGA tournament, then if that's going to fill up the parking lot, then we don't schedule something for the spare room at the restaurant. Another example, we can exceed the parking capacity of the Chota Rec Center by filling up all of the meeting rooms. But the issue is that we shouldn't schedule meetings if we've exceeded the capacity of the parking lot. Now, the other point that comes to the meeting room process, what we found is that it took up to 5 phone calls with 5 different people to try to schedule a room. And we had spare capacity, but it wasn't being put out and put available. So that's the other, if you want to call it the third leg of this meeting reservation system, is that we're going to put it online. You're going to be able to look at what rooms are available, and then with one phone call, be able to talk to one individual and schedule a room.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. Am I permitted to ask Parker Owens a question?
Of course.
Go ahead.
All right, so I'm doing this out of memory, but your capital expenditure slide showed, I think it was $4.68 million with a $20,000 under budget number. And then I looked at the items above it, and that added up to about $120,000 negative, or I should say under budget amount. So did you have $100,000 of over budget items that aren't in that number?
Part of that dealt with the carryover of the Wellness Center roof. So what was budgeted versus what actually got spent in the year goes into that number. Admittedly, if we had been able to complete the Wellness Center roof in 2019, we would have had an overage.
Okay, thank you. Mr. White?
I've graduated to Mr. This is good news. A microphone to Winston Blazer, please. I have a clarification request. And because I had the same question that you had from the person that was wanting to come into Tellico Village, talk our property owners into leasing their boats to generate revenue, or in effect a broker to lease our unused watercraft during the course of the year. And I got an answer to that. And the answer, Mr. Blazer, could you explain to the group here the difference between our position as a residential dock and a commercial dock?
Yes, if we were to go into the business of renting and so forth, long story short, would there be significant fees and regulations laid upon us by the governing body of the water, which is TVA? And so it takes us to a whole new element. TVA kind of stays out of our way as long as we have, good, safe operations. Right now, you take it to a marina operation, there's fees and so forth that are laid on you. I forgot exactly what the criteria are, Pat, but there's a lot of fees that go with that would diminish the value to the property owners in that regard.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm really sorry, you guys, but I've been given the high sign by the timer down here. So we are out of time, but I have good news for you. The committee and the folks on this panel up here are going to be staying afterward and hanging out in the lobby, so you can ask further questions if you'd like to, or take your handout right here, turn it over to the back page where you will see a screenshot of the Tellico Life home page. And you will notice on that page, on the bottom left, it says the new 2019 strategic plan is here, and there is a link to submit your questions, and the committee then answers those questions and posts them to the website. So it's a really great way to get clarification or ask questions that we didn't have time for here today. So thank you very much, and I will turn it back over to Mr. Ken Litkey.
Okay, thank you. We were mixing some questions there at the end to the POA, and that's okay. So at this point in time, are there any other questions that would be to the POA, the HOA, or question right there?
Did you have was yours long range or no?
Mine's to the POA.
Okay.
Thank you. Rick Carlin here. Question for Winston. And this question came to mind during Parker's presentation about the Summit Medical Center. And in your conversations or meetings with the Summit management in terms of the medical center here, have they given you any feedback regarding the acceptance of that facility by their patients, by their current patients or new patients? In other words, has the patient level at that facility not met whatever expectation level they have? Is it about equal? Has it substantially exceeded what their expectation level was? And may they then, as a result of that, increase the breadth of services that they're going to offer at that facility? Thank you.
Yes, can't remember what month it was. It was probably spring, late spring maybe, somewhere in there. But talked to Mr. Curtis at that time. He told me that they were very pleased with the reception that they had received. Utilization was farther along than they had expected. They had anticipated, I think, running a loss for the first 2 years, but they were already breaking even. So I haven't got a recent update from him on the operations, but that report, let's just say mid-2019, was very promising.
Hello. My name is Larry Schaefer. A quick question. There's been stuff floating around about charging for the use of rooms, and I want to know whether there's any truth to it, and when is it going to be resolved, if there is?
There is no charging for rooms in the current budget. I will make no promise as to what will happen in the future, but we told everybody when we were doing the budget there would be no charges for rooms, and there are no charges for rooms.
Easy question, Jerry Rubel. Was there insurance coverage for the roof at the Wellness Center? Was there insurance coverage for the roof at the Wellness Center?
Yes, there was insurance coverage, and it covered the storm damage minus the deductible. The deductible's $10,000. I think we netted about $67,000 reimbursement from the insurance company. So that did help, yes, sir.
Okay, that seems to be all the questions right now. I would like to thank the POA, the Long Range Planning Advisory Committee, and all the presenters, as well as all the questioners. I think there were a lot of great questions asked, and if there are more questions, we're going to adjourn as a group out to the area in the narthex, and I'll have some light refreshments, and you can continue your questioning and meet board members, meet the HOA board as well. So thank you for coming tonight, and I appreciate it. Sure, where do you want to do it?